Hello, BookTube. I have some new arrivals for you that we're going to try and wrestle to the mat in less than 40 minutes. I have not read any of these. Shameful, sluggish, I know, but I will read all of them. I haven't read any of them, but they're all on my docket. So the first one is up right away. And this is, let's see here. This is a March book. This comes out in early March. It's a kid's book. But I suspect that a lot of adults will find it very useful. And this is by Mark Scott and illustrated by Mick Marston, and it's called A Beginner's Project in Coding. This is a kid's book about learning to code. Ever wondered how to make a computer follow instructions? Many times, yes. If so, then it is time to get coding. Using the free programming languages of Scratch and Python, those are the ones listed there, these step-by-step projects will have young coders making their own computer games in no time. Accessible, engaging, and fun, this book is bursting with eye-catching illustrations and fantastic projects to introduce aspiring young programmers to the world of coding. And it's spiral-bound, so it can very much be worked on, and it can be left open so that many kids can look at it. And it takes you step-by-step through how to do coding exercises in Scratch and Python. But you don't have to know much about coding, certainly I don't, to know that the basics here are going to apply to a lot of different things, not just those languages. And I don't see any reason why you shouldn't get kids doing this right away. It's going to be the language of their world, far more than English or any other language. It's going to be the language of their world, so why not? I would think that a responsible academic curriculum would have coding as essential part of grade school education, so that by the time you get to high school, you know how to do basic coding. You certainly know the thinking behind it. I think we're way behind the times. You don't do that. So I read a self-published kids book that was even simpler than this a couple of years ago on how to code, that broke down things even. The one I read a couple of years ago was indie published. I wish I could remember the name of it. I don't have it anymore. But it was for elementary school children. It was for little kids who couldn't read or could only barely read. It was basically a kid's picture book on how to code. And the idea there was the same as the one here, only this one's a little more advanced. The idea was to get you into the mind frame of what coding is, what it does, which a lot of adults don't know. so there you go. That's the first one. And this next one is going to seem like an oddity from me, but I've mentioned many times on this channel that if an author has credit in the bank with me, then I'll read anything. If they have written something that pleases me and have never displeased me, then their credit is good, and I will launch right on. And that's what I'm going to do here. This comes out in late February. This is by David Goldblatt, and it's called The Age of Football, Soccer in the 21st Century. And the reason why I will read this, even though I'm not a sports reader generally, is that this author wrote a book called The Ball is Round that I thought was great about soccer. I absolutely loved it. We saw it on a library tour. So this is his next book on soccer. In 2014, 1 billion people watched the World Cup final. More than 3 billion watched the 2018 World Cup matches. 3 billion people. In an era of widening global divisions, soccer commands the passion and engagement of more people in more places than any other popular cultural form in the world. That's according to the author of this book. The Goldblatt, one of soccer's preeminent historians and the author of the acclaimed bestseller The Ball is Round, is the person to explain the universally revered history of the sport. Age of Football goes deeper and wider, exploring soccer not simply as a distraction from the real world, but as a reflection of it, of the economics, social, and political power driving global events. And that is just what I got in The Ball is Round. This is going to be even more so. So, I don't play soccer. I don't know anything about it. I couldn't tell you even one single rule, except my usual, which is that dogs would be better at it than humans. It is always on in the neighborhood restaurant. The neighborhood restaurant, all of the guys who run it are ardent soccer fans. And it is always on, and when I go over there for my steamed broccoli or my rice, I will often have to wait a bit, and I will watch it and see, and I always marvel at A, the fact that the stadiums are enormous and always full, and B, the sheer athletic prowess of these guys that do this, because they're on the move all the time across a vast field. 90% of what they do is running around. The actual plays come down to, at the goal, those things are isolated events in a soccer game. So I can't wait to read this. I will wait just a bit to read it, but I have a few other things on my docket, but that'll be this week. Then this next one is a biography, and it has a beautiful cover. Rebel Cinderella. Look at that. As simple as that. Doesn't need to be an out-of-focus sepia tone photo. It doesn't need to be a blurry historical archive thing. It can be this. Perfectly eye-catching. And this is somebody that you may not know. This is a historical figure you may not know. The author you will know. Adam Hochschild wrote King Leopold's Ghost. So if you read any nonfiction, you will know that, because that book was phenomenally popular. But what have we got here? This comes out in early March. And let's see here. Let me tell you a little about... Oh, God. I have a gigantic amount of material here that I do not need. Rose Pastor arrived in New York City in 1903. A Jewish refugee from Russia who had worked in cigar factories since the age of 11. 2 years later, she captured headlines across the globe when she married James Graham Phelps Stokes, scion of one of the legendary 400 families of New York's highest society. Their union of rich and poor, native-born and immigrant, Gentile and Jew, made them America's most important couple. Together, they joined the burgeoning Socialist Party and moved among the liveliest group of activists and dreamers this country has ever seen. Their friends included Emma Goldman, Big Bill Haywood, Eugene V. Debs, John Reed, Margaret Sanger, Jack London, and W.E.B. Du Bois. Rose stirred audiences to tears, becoming one of the most renowned radical orators of her time, and advocated vehemently for the rights of labor, leading strikes of restaurant waiters and garment workers. She campaigned alongside the country's earliest feminists to publicly defy laws against distributing information about birth control. And President Wilson, President Woodrow Wilson, described her as one of the dangerous influences of the country. And this is her biography by a writer of nonfiction, of popular nonfiction, who really knows what he's doing. Right? Because King Leopold's Ghost is in every person you know has heard of that book. Every reader you know has heard of that book. It's in every library. It's on it. I have found it in the one-shelf personal book collections of people who don't read at all. And here is his next book. So, and it's about an equally unknown figure. King Leopold was not known to the general reading public when that book burst onto the scene, and this person is not either. So, I can't wait to see what kind of effect it has. Can't wait to see how widely it's reviewed either. Then this next one. How are we doing for time? Oh, yeah, good. We don't want this to be 40 minutes. Too many 40-minute videos from Steve. This next one comes out in early March. It's from Library of America, but you'd never know it. Library of America is a sort of an American pleiade. It's an American commemorative publishing group that publishes great works, all in uniform black dust jacket with a red, white, and blue stripe. Canonical American authors, but they also do decorative volumes. They go far afield. They will publish new authors or new collections of old authors that are not part of that series. And that's what this is. I don't know if we saw this already. This is edited by Andrew Rubenfeld and Terry Tempest Williams, the great Terry Tempest Williams. And this is a Library of America volume called American Birds, a literary companion. So, see, it doesn't look like a Library of America. It has the little sigil right there, but you barely notice it in the foliage. And this comes out in March. Americans have always been fascinated by birds, and from the beginning, American writers have captured this keen interest in a variety of genres: poems, journal entries, memoirs, short stories, essays, and travel writing. This book brings together the very best of this writing from over 2 centuries. No, it doesn't. It might bring together quite a bit that's good, but it would be 3 times as big if it did. But I'm dying to know who's in here. In a collection that ranges from the Aleutian Islands to the Florida Keys, from the Maine woods to the deserts of the Southwest, and even to our gardens and backyard feeders. So who is in here? The book invites readers to listen to the exquisite beauty of 3 Native American songs about birds. It follows Lewis and Clark as they encounter new species on their journey across the continent. It looks over Audubon's shoulder as he sketches in New Orleans. And it joins Emerson and Thoreau rambling around Walden Pond. Here, too, are Theodore Roosevelt as he recalls the birds of his New York childhood, Rachel Carson observing a skimmer on the Atlantic coast, and Roger Tory Peterson casting a keen eye on snail kites and limpkins in the Everglades. And plenty of other people besides. Fantastic. So, is it illustrated? No, it's not, but that's all right. It's got green end papers. That's all that counts. So this comes out in March. Wonderful. So if you're interested, make a note. Then we'll finish up this controlled New arrivals. We are not going to 40 minutes. we'll finish it up with two addiction memoirs. The first is by Diane Keaton, and it is Brother and Sister. This is her memoir of her brother. And that is him. And what have we got here? Let's see here. When they were kids in the suburbs of Los Angeles in the 1950s, Diane Keaton and her younger brother Randy were best friends and companions, the two eldest of four children who lived, in some ways, the picture-perfect American childhood. But as they grew up, Randy became troubled, then reclusive. Before he was 30, he was divorced, an alcoholic, a man who couldn't hold on to full-time work, his life a world away from his sisters and from the rest of the family. Now Diane is delving into the nuances of their shared and separate past to confront the difficult question of how and why Randy ended up living his life on the other side of normal. In beautiful and fearless prose that's intertwined with journal entries, letters, and poetry, much of it Randy's own, and supplemented by personal photographs and artwork, this insightful, heartfelt memoir contemplates the inner workings of a family, the ties of love and responsibility that hold it together, and the special bond that between siblings, even those who are pulled apart. Okay, so this comes out in early February. This is another February 4th release. And I naturally want to know if Randy is still alive, but I guess I'll read the book and find out. I won't even spoil it by Googling it. So that is the first of our addiction memoirs to wrap up this new arrivals. And the second one is direct. This is secondhand. It's a sister talking about the deterioration of her brother. This is a memoir of an addict himself, a former addict. And this is by Dan Perez, and it's an As Needed for Pain, a memoir of addiction. And this comes out, let's see here. This is from Harper. Comes out in early February. I have a fascination for these kinds of books. I've read a lot of them. Let's see here. One of New York's top editors during the not-so-distant heyday of glossy print magazines. Is it not so distant? I hope. Dan Perez lived an enviable, high-profile life, but he was hiding something. The longtime editor-in-chief of Details was a high-functioning drug addict who was consuming up to 60 pills a day. 60 pills a day. That's enough for a floor of a hospital. In his piercingly candid memoir, As Needed for Pain, Perez chronicles how this addiction, intricately interwoven with the demands of the high-powered career, played out for an awkward kid from the Baltimore suburbs. As the need for opiates took control of his life, long before the country's terrifying opiate crisis was front-page news, Perez became expert at gaming the system to score the increasing amounts of drugs he needed to get by, strategically keeping his habit from even those closest to him. What started with routine back surgery in the late 1990s, that's always the door open. You have some minor surgery, some minor thing, you're given painkillers, and you realize the incredibly warm and comfortable, numbing blanket that they pull over you. And quite apart from the relief they give you from the pain, you want to continue being able to pull that blanket over you whenever you have the need, whenever you're feeling the raw edges of the world. I don't blame any of these people, because the feeling that you get from those hospital-delivered opiates is incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like, okay, well, if I push the plunger here, I'm going to get bliss, but not unconsciousness. I'm going to get warm, welcoming comfort from anything that's been troubling me. And then I will gradually feel it go away, and I can ask for more. Anyway, let's see here. That back surgery would lead to a decade-long spiral into the depths of addiction, which he wrestled with between smuggling 1,000 black market pills across the border from Mexico, trying not to vomit in front of Ralph Lauren, and a cringeworthy, albeit memorable, rooftop meeting with Mike Tyson. Wow, okay. With a surprising amount of levity at times. I've noticed that as an element in these books, usually. Perez shares a harrowing story of sinking low, then lower in order to feed his habit. Along the way, he gives readers a rarefied glimpse into the well-appointed offices and globe-trotting lifestyle of fashion journalism during an often excessive peak years. So, it comes out in February. It's on my February docket, absolutely. It sounds fascinating. So there you go. Those are some new arrivals for you. A couple of drug memoirs, As Needed for Pain, by Dan Perez, and Brother and Sister by Diane Keaton. Then we have American Birds from the Library of America, just a survey of bird writing in American literature across the centuries. Then Rebel Cinderella by Adam Hochschild, the author of King Leopold's Ghost. Then The Age of Football by David Goldblatt, who is the author of The Ball is Round, which is a must-have book for soccer fans. And finally, A Beginner's Projects in Coding. A children's book, a spiral-bound children's book that teaches you how to code in a couple of very accessible common languages. But that also teaches you not just those languages, but the roots, the idea, the ethos of coding, which everybody should know. I know I'm one to talk, but nevertheless, every young person should know. Shouldn't be at the mercy of other people to do your own coding. It's your language. So there you go. There are some new arrivals for you in 16 minutes. I know exactly what you're all going to say. Talk as long as you like. You're such enablers. I'm going to wrap this up at 16 minutes. And I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.